Kent Hovind has done a lot of debates, and I've seen basically all of them. Yes, I have wasted my life. But there's one thing I've noticed that people unfortunately never call Kent out on. Although at the time of me recording this, I am excited to say that in his last debate, his opponent actually did. Hovind always says that people shouldn't just call him a liar, they should be specific. Well, I'm going to be very specific and focus on what I think is his biggest lie in this video. Kent often gets cornered in debates where the opponent will ask him a question about creationism that he cannot answer, or they show something else about his worldview that is fallacious. Hovind prefers to try and poke holes in the evolution theory versus having to actually offer some sort of evidence for creationism. And a side note, when I say evolution in this video, unless otherwise stated, I mean microevolution by natural selection plus macroevolution, which is speciation. So whenever Kent gets cornered like this, his excuse for not being able to defend creationism is to say, "Oh, I'm not asking for my theory to be taught in public schools at taxpayer expense." Now this is an absolute lie and I can prove it. He thinks that it doesn't matter if his position is completely unscientific, unfalsifiable, and unprovable, since he allegedly isn't trying to get it taught in public schools, he has no burden of proof. Even if this moral grandstanding had any truth to it, Kent is trying to get evolution out of the public school science curriculum and is trying to replace it with biblical creation pseudoscience. Exhibit A. Kent has a video called Public School Presentation.
But I think it's essential that students get the information, that they see, hey, it's okay, I can learn about the Bible in my public school, I can learn about creation in my public school. But you can go through your textbook, find the places where the information is not correct, and cut the page out. I'm sure you can get local volunteers in churches in your area that would be thrilled to come help do that. Cut out the false information. If you'd like, send me a sample copy of your book, and I will make a list and tell you what pages need to be removed. I have read through scores, if not hundreds and hundreds of these textbooks, and I can find these things very quickly. Or, an alternative to that, you could simply glue the pages together. The law says you can teach creation if you want. You don't have to, but you can if you want. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. There seems to be a lot of confusion on this topic, and it's unnecessary. I think we need to get back to teaching the basics, teach students, hey, it's okay, kids, you can teach creation. We can teach creation in class if we want. You can even read the Bible to them. Read the Bible story about the creation and say, students, what do you think? Even the evolutionists admit this. It's never been against the law to teach creation. Stephen Jay Gould, raving evolutionist, said, "No statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It could be taught before and it can be taught now." So he knows it can be taught.
Kent Hovind has shockingly taken this quote and ripped it out of its context. It's something he and other creationists do a lot. For example, the section in Origin of Species about the evolution of the eye. But let's take a look at the full quote. Now this is from an article in the New York Times written in 1987 by Stephen Jay Gould, and it was published shortly after the Equal Time Bill was ruled unconstitutional. It was their law that abridged the most precious meaning of academic freedom, the freedom of teachers to follow the dictates of their consciences, their training, and their professional commitments. Creationists claim that their law broadened the freedom of teachers by permitting the introduction of controversial material, but no statute exists in any state to bar instructions in creation science. It could be taught before and it can be taught now. Now, since Gould was a scientist, he writes in a very technical way that kind of goes over my head a little bit in this article, but I think I understand what he was trying to say here. Creationists are saying that the concept of academic freedom mentioned in their law means that public school teachers should be free to teach controversial material. Controversial meaning stuff that is illegal for a teacher to teach their students. But like he says, there's no explicit law that said teachers cannot currently have creation science in their curriculum. The teachers simply hadn't adopted it across the board because creationism is disproven nonsense. It's quite ironic that Kent Hovind decided to try and quote mine Gould because later in this same article, he calls out creationists for their willingness to distort, misquote, and take out of context scientists and strawman their arguments.
Now pay attention. I believe the world was created in 6 days about 6,000 years ago. I don't think it's millions of years old. And then I think 4,400 years ago there was a giant flood that completely destroyed the world. A guy named Noah built a big boat and saved all the critters on board. Now, before that flood came, things were very different. From the creation up until the flood, people lived to be really, really old, like over 900 years old. Adam was 930 when he died. Now, during this time, when people are living to be really, really old, strange things would happen to the reptiles, because reptiles never stop growing. What would happen to a reptile if you let him live in the Garden of Eden and live to be 900 years old? Get really big. I think dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago. I think they were big lizards that lived in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. I think he took dinosaurs on the ark.
Exhibit B, Kent just straight up admits that he wants public school science teachers to show his tapes in their classrooms.
But we are teaching kids real science here, and lots of teachers are using my videotapes on creation in their public school classroom. Actually, there are public school libraries that have my videos. Kids can check them out. There's no law against that, and there shouldn't be.
Exhibit C, Kent has a video called Children's Video About Dinosaurs. Now, I don't think that this is a public school group of children. If the Amazon listing is taken from the back of the DVD case, it says that these kids are in grade school and they're very young. But compare his timeline to the public school presentation and note the differences.
Dinosaur bones, and then they always have to say, millions of years ago, and my little buzzer goes off, man, not true. Let me tell you another story about dinosaurs. I believe God made the world in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago, just like the Bible says. And then 4,400 years ago, there was a big flood. A guy named Noah built a huge boat and saved all the critters on there. Now, before the flood came, the world was a lot different. The people lived to be 900 years old before the flood came. And during that time, when people are living a long time, the dinosaurs would be big because they're just big reptiles. Did you know even today reptiles never stop growing? Now, what would happen to a lizard if he grows all of his life and you let him live to be 900 years old? Ooh, you would have a dinosaur, a big lizard. See, dinosaurs were just big lizards that lived in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve.
Exhibit D, and this is a big one. Kent Hovind tried to influence legislation in Arkansas via a House bill, Arkansas House Bill 2548. This bill basically said that Arkansas would not use tax dollars to purchase textbooks that had quote-unquote known lies in it, or things they should have known were lies. But all of the things that were listed as lies were just Kent's talking points. In fact, all of the information is the same as in the creationist chick tract Big Daddy. And once again, we see Kent intentionally avoiding using any mention of the word God or religion, but also he avoids using the word evolution completely. I wonder why he's doing that. In response to the criticism of this bill, Kent tried to say that it somehow wasn't an anti-evolution bill, but when all the talking points in it mentioned vestigial structures, embryology, Piltdown Man, Peking Man, etc., it's pretty obvious that this is creationist propaganda. The bill also says that when a statement is identified by the instructor or teacher to be a theory, the instructor shall instruct the class to make a marginal notation that the statement is a theory. And of course, this bill is using the incorrect definition of theory, but this basically means that the teacher can tell their students to mark anything they want as a theory, and the students have to do it. So I think it's pretty obvious that a teacher with a religious bias could tell their students, okay, mark all this stuff about evolution as being a theory, aka false, and mark all this other stuff that I'm teaching you about creation as true. I think I can end the video right here, as this is pretty damning evidence, and this bill might not seem like a big deal, but it only missed passing by 6 votes. Think about that. Kent Hovind almost influenced public policy in education. That's kind of scary. Oh well, I guess Kent will just have to sue the government for $500 million instead. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Smash that like button and I hope you have a nice day.